Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Cathedral. The Sunshine Cathedral is a different kind of church where the past is past and the future has infinite possibilities. And with that, we invite you to come and worship with us here on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. at 1480 Southwest 9th Avenue. Now, I invite you to come in and worship with us here at the Sunshine Cathedral.
Our first reading is from the Psalter. Shout to God, all the earth. Sing the glory of God's name. Give glorious praise. The whole earth worships you and sings praises to you. All creation praises your name. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our second reading is from the Wisdom of Joel Goldsmith. The spiritually illumined will recognize that because no good can come or go, that because spiritual activity is always of the nature of fulfillment, that because their illumination has revealed the reality of things, they are anchored in soul, in God consciousness, in spiritual peace, security, and serenity. We will fear no change in the outer picture because the outer is but a reflection of the allness within. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
God is with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, indwelling Christ.
Jesus said to his disciples, "If you love and obey the command I give you, I will ask the one who sent me to give you another paraclete, another helper to be with you always, the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot accept, since the world neither sees nor recognizes her. But you can recognize the Spirit because she remains with you and will be within you. I won't leave you orphaned. I will come back to you. A little while now, and the world will see me no more. But you'll see me, because I live, and you will live as well. On that day, you'll know that I am in God, and you are in me, and I am in you." This is the gospel, the good news.
Well, so there was that part in the gospel reading today about I will not leave you orphan. This thing about needing to remember, this thing about needing to know that even when someone is apart from us, there is part of them that is always with us. And that is a very healing idea. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, you will see the sacred icon on the wall and on the screen of little orphan Annie. She's probably in churches all over the world today. she's so common. Who grew up reading the comic strip Little Orphan Annie? Show of hands. See, nobody at 9 o'clock. Nobody knew who I was talking about, but even though she's been around for a long, long time. Well, Little Orphan Annie was a comic strip. You know, you saw her on Sunday, the Sunday comics that in the color, and it ran forever from 1924 to 2010. It's only been out of circulation for about 4 years. The last year it was only in about 20 newspapers, so they just canceled it. But in that storyline, the 11-year-old Annie, who from 1924 to 2010 was always 11, if they can freeze that at about 36, I'm in. But I'll have to stop at 47, won't I? But in any case, she's always 11 for all that time. And she's an orphan, but she's very generous, right? She's very generous, and she's a young person, but she has a strong character, and she's very courageous. And her courage is demonstrated when she rescues a mongrel from a group of abusive boys. And she calls the dog Sandy, and Sandy is her companion from then on. Well, the comic strip inspired a radio program in 1930, and a film in 1932, and another one in 1938. And then in 1977, Annie found her way to the promised land, Broadway. Annie hit the big white way. Now she matters, right? In 1977. And in that musical version of this comic strip, the musical version, Annie, we see the Depression-era orphan battling a nefarious orphanage matron, and and she has a lot of bad luck in lots of ways. She's in the care of this mean person, and she's lost her parents, and she's hoping to be adopted, and she dreams of having good parents one day, and so she has all of these hopes and dreams, even though life so far has not worked out the way she would want it to. She still chooses to be optimistic. She still chooses to imagine how things could be better, and she lets that hope sustain her, even when it doesn't seem to be manifesting in her experience yet. She still dares to dream of how things could be better. And so even though there are difficulties in her life and challenges and setbacks and disappointments, she chooses the power of optimism. Well, everyone remembers the comic strip, and surely everyone in this church remembers the Broadway musical. But what you may not know is that the comic strip that inspired the radio, film, and stage productions was itself inspired by a poem. In 1885, James Whitcomb Riley wrote a poem called The Elf Child. Well, you know, that doesn't sound right? So they eventually changed the name of it to Little Orphan Annie. Orphaned with a T. I think that's sort of an archaic way of saying orphaned. But Little Orphan Annie, he actually based the poem on Mary Alice Smith, who was an orphan who lived with his family when he was a child. His family took her in, and she lived with them. And so he wrote this poem based on his friend that he grew up with. The 4-verse poem that gave rise to musicals and movies and a comic strip legend. Imagine an orphan who is taken into a family, and she not only does her share of chores, and from the sound of the poem, more than her shares. I think they basically got free labor out of this kid, but it was the 1800s, and things were different then. But they take this child in, and she does all of these chores for the household, but she also regales the children, the other children of the household, with ghost stories about goblins that snatch children up who misbehave. So that's good, right? So she tells she's a good worker and she's a good storyteller, so they kept her around. Well, the point of the poem comes at the end of it, when the readers and hearers are encouraged to show the people they love how dear they are to them, and not only to show the people they love that they love them, but also to care for the poor and disadvantaged, like orphans. And so the poem goes, Little orphaned Annies come to our house to stay, and wash the cups and saucers up, and brush the crumbs away, and shoo the chickens off the porch, and dust the hearth and sweep, and make the fire and bake the bread, and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we sit around the kitchen fire and has the mostest fun, a-listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the goblins at Get You, if you don't watch out. Once there was a little boy, wouldn't say his prayers, and when he went to bed at night, away upstairs, his mommy heard him holler and his daddy heard him bawl, and when they turned the kivers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room and cubbyhole and press, and seeked him in the chimbley flue and everywheres, I guess. But all they ever found was just his pants and roundabout. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And one time, a little girl would allus laugh and grin and make fun of everyone and all her blood and kin. And once when they was company and old folks was there, she mocked 'em and shocked 'em and said she didn't care. And just as she kicked her heels and turned to run and hide, they was two big scary things a-standing by her side. And they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knowed what she's about. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And little orphan Annie says, when the blaze is blue and the lampwick sputters and the wind goes woo, and you hear the crickets quit and the moon is gray and the lightning bugs and dew is all squinched away, you better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them that loves you and dry the orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones as clusters all about, or the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And in these human words, God's voice is heard, right? Cherish those who love you. Be grateful for your blessings, and know that you always have some. No matter what else is going wrong, there are also blessings. And care for those in need. Whatever you're facing, someone is facing something also, maybe even worse. Words that could have come from the prophets themselves. From Jesus even, and sentiments that did indeed come from the prophets and Jesus. Little orphan Annie came to mind as I was reflecting on the gospel reading today. The phrase, "I won't leave you orphaned," just jumped out at me. And little orphan Annie is how that phrase was redeemed for me. I was so tempted to talk about the Psalms. Shout to God, let's just be happy and sing. I wanted to talk about that because it was easy. But then I thought, no, let me wrestle with this passage in John. And anytime I preach on John, it is a wrestling match for me. I don't care for John's gospel. I don't care for Deutero-Pauline literature, and I don't care for John's gospel particularly. And yet, anytime that I do the effort of wrestling with it, I do find something good from it. Sort of like Jacob wrestling with the angel, not letting go till he gets his blessing. And that's how I have to read John. I have to just wrestle with it and not give up until I get my blessing. And little orphan Annie helped me find that blessing today. At first, I bristled at the phrase, "I won't leave you orphaned." John's gospel is highly symbolic and allegorical and philosophical, and it's just not accessible in lots of ways. It sounds too highfalutin. It just sounds too high-minded. It's not really where people seem to live. And when you compare John's Jesus to the Jesus in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it doesn't even seem like the same person. Of course, it's being written decades after Jesus, so of course there is a lot of imagination involved. And so it's hard to struggle with John's language and John's Jesus. And frankly, John's language gets on my nerves. And maybe I have unresolved issues resulting from the way John has been overly literalized and used as a weapon to not only control Christians, but also convert those of other faith experiences. Moreover, John's portrayal of Jesus as smug and omniscient and all too willing to infantilize his friends also annoys me. "I'm going away, little ones, but don't worry, I won't leave you orphaned." No one would like that person. No one would be compelled to hang around this person. Except I don't think John is really even talking about Jesus. John is using Jesus to talk about what his friends are going through. If we can get past John's off-putting style, we see what he was really trying to achieve. The anonymous writer we call John is telling a community that feels alone that in a cosmic sense, they are not alone and can never be alone. He is comforting people who feel orphaned. He isn't future telling. He is addressing issues at hand. I know you're hurting, and in the midst of your pain, there is still hope to be had. John is actually loving and caring for and expressing concern for people who feel abandoned and alone and increasingly hopeless. The point isn't how he imagines Jesus, but how he creatively tries to tend the needs of the hurting people right in front of him. John is writing between 90 and 100 of the Common Era. Jesus was executed more than 60 years earlier. Paul was executed 35 years after Jesus, and Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed 40 or 41 years after Jesus' death. And so there's been a lot of loss in the movement. Jesus is gone, Paul is gone, the temple is gone, for heaven's sakes. And to add to all the loss and devastation, the apocalyptic hopes that many had been preaching were starting to seem all too unlikely. And that may seem strange to hear, apocalyptic hope. But apocalyptic literature was resistance literature. It was a way to resist oppression and imagine a better day. And so when people are talking about in apocalyptic literature battles and the end of things and the end of days and the end of an age and the end of the world, it is so that it will be replaced by something better. This world is oppressive. It is too broken to fix. We can only imagine it being replaced. Start over. Hit the reset button. And so that was comforting for people who thought there's no hope in this system. We just need a whole new system. And so this literature, the genre of apocalyptic literature that lasted for a couple hundred years, it started going around saying, you know what, maybe that's exactly what's going to happen. God is just going to hit the reset button, and then it'll be better. Well, after that had been being preached for a very long time, and the reset button still wasn't pressed, people started getting depressed. Jesus is gone. Paul is gone. Our holy city is gone. Its temple is gone. And this revenge that we thought God and God's angels were going to exact, it hasn't happened either. And it's been generations. Maybe it's not going to happen. And people are feeling depressed and hopeless. The gospel writer Mark wrote to his community that some people hearing his message would still be alive at the apocalyptic moment when God would somehow intervene in human history, overturn the oppressive empire, and usher in a divine kingdom where the oppressed would become the leaders, the rulers of the new world order. Mark imagines Jesus saying, some of you hearing my voice will be here when that happens. Well, Mark is long gone, and almost his entire audience is probably long gone by the time John is writing. It's been 30 years since Mark said that, and most people who heard his message are dead, and no such apocalyptic change of fortune has occurred. Paul, too, thought that an apocalypse would happen in his lifetime, putting an end to empire and establishing a divine kingdom in its place. And he, too, was mistaken. Now, I'm not even talking about denominations in the 19th and 20th century that were founded on picking a date that this would happen, and then resetting the date, because the date came and went, and then resetting the date again. And I'm not talking about televangelists who have raised grillions of dollars, saying that it's going to happen any minute. And I'm not talking about the people who wiped out the supermarket shelves preparing for Y2K. I'm talking about the first century. And so, never mind 2,000 years of, you know what, clearly, no, it's not happening anytime soon. These people were given up after 60 or 70 years, and fair enough. You know, I'm not a very patient person, too. I would have given it maybe 3 or 4 months. But, you know, after generations, you know what? It's not happening soon anyway, and it may not happen at all. And so Paul was mistaken. Mark was mistaken. And John is way after these people. And so John has to realize that the Christian movements have lost Jesus and Paul and the temple, and the apocalyptic revenge they were hoping for never happened. People are starting to feel hopeless, abandoned, alone. One terrible thing after another happens, and we don't even get any sense of justice, certainly no vengeance out of it. When is it going to be better? And in response to those feelings, John assures his community that they are not alone. You feel abandoned. You feel betrayed, you feel hopeless, you feel like no one is on your side, and all I can do is try to think of a way of telling you that you're not alone. The Spirit of life, the substance of life, is omnipresent, and not only is it with them, but it is expressed through and as them, and as us, as we face our challenges and heartaches and pain. If we can imagine ourselves embraced by a larger life, then we won't feel abandoned or powerless. And therefore, there is always hope to sustain us. And hope will sustain us. I don't believe that there is any such thing as false hope. Even when what we hoped for doesn't come to pass, the hope itself was sustaining. It kept us going. It served a purpose. It never then, in an ultimate sense, disappoints. Paul told the Romans, hope does not disappoint. He didn't say hope always is fulfilled. He didn't say our every wish is granted, but he did say hope does not disappoint. Because hope is energizing. Hope lets us imagine better possibilities. Hope helps us work on those possibilities. And the things that do change are the things that we didn't give up on too soon. So even if they don't change, at least we gave it a shot. And hope is what sustained us in the efforts. And so we are not left alone because we are one with all that is. The Spirit of life fills us. We are always in the presence of something, and that something is always offering us hope. Last Sunday, we read John's Jesus affirming that he was in God and God was in him. And today, we hear about this paraclete, this helper, this presence, that is the expression of God in a way of always being with us. So this is a continuation of last week's reading, where Jesus says, I am in God and God is in us. And now, in that continuation, John's Jesus says, and I'm not always with you. Jesus has already been gone for 60 years when John writes this. So yes, Jesus isn't here with you physically, but the Spirit that motivated Jesus is still with us, and the work that Jesus did still needs to be done, and we can still do it together, so we are never alone. We always have our purpose. We always have our hope. We always have one another. We always have the future to move toward. And so this paraclete, this helper that is being given to us, left with us, is a way of saying that we are in God, filled with God, connected to one another. John is imagining Jesus reminding the readers that they are in God and God is in them. They are never alone. The omnipresence of Spirit that connects all life, that fills all life, is the substance of all life. And that is reaffirmed as John has Jesus say, I am in God, and you are in me, and I am in you. We're all part of the same thing. We are all in this together. The one life expresses through each of us. The one life is individualized as each of us. And so we are never alone. In last week's reading, John's Jesus says that the hearers will do greater works than he did, healing, justice-seeking, challenging oppression. And he promises that when people are doing that work, if they need help, that they can actually prayerfully ask for that help, and they will receive the help they need to do the work. And that theme is continued with the imagery of God's power and presence and Spirit being present as the helper, the paraclete, the comforter, the counselor. It's translated in lots of ways. Helper is actually the best translation. And the translators from the version we heard today call the Spirit she, a maternal image, and that is actually culturally appropriate. In the Greek, the word for Spirit is it. The pronoun would be it. It's gender neutral. It's never masculine. But in the Hebrew, the Spirit pronoun would be feminine. It's she. And so these Jewish people in their Jewish community it is appropriate to imagine them thinking of the Spirit as this maternal presence, this feminine, loving, nurturing presence that will not let them go, that is always present, who is always present to help. Now, I don't enjoy John's gospel as much as the others, but when I consider that the anonymous writer we are calling John is looking around at people, and he's seeing that they're hurting and afraid and overwhelmed and disappointed, and he finds his heart breaking when he considers that people are losing hope, of course he has to respond the best way he can. You can live without a lot of money. I've proven that for a long time. You can live with pain. You can live with loneliness. You can live with disappointment. You can live with uncertainty. But it's almost impossible to keep going without hope. And so I can imagine John thinking about his friends and his neighbors and community members and sensing their growing hopelessness. And so I can see him doing whatever he can, however awkward or desperate or even corny his words appear to be. He knows that he has to do something. And so he does what he can to say to people, things, of course, aren't always easy, and they don't go as well as we might wish sometimes. But please never give up the belief that you matter, that you are God's miracle and not God's mistake, that you are part and parcel of the divine reality, that divine love will never let you go, that it flows through you and fills you now and forever. What a comfort when we lose everything or when we lose someone, to know that the love that we experienced with them lives on forever, not only in our heart, but in God's. It lives on forever. And so John is basically saying, affirm your sacred value and trust that you are never really alone. Spirit holds you, fills you, walks with you, and is present to you eternally. You have a helper at hand, and because you are not alone, because there is a presence and a power that is always with you, part of you, there is always reason to hope. Hope for healing, even if that doesn't mean cure. Hope for love, even if that doesn't mean romance. Hope for prosperity, even if that doesn't mean great wealth. Hope for happiness, even if that doesn't mean that life is easy. And you can hope because you are not alone. You will never be alone. You are part of the one life that lives forever. And so you are never alone. Because of the Spirit, we are never really orphans. And this is the good news. Amen. That's really the only promise. Not that we get our way every time, not that things are easy, not that even things are fair, but that we never have to face anything alone. That we are equal to our challenges, and that in spite of challenges, there is a peace and a joy that circumstances can't give and that circumstances can't take away. And when we have that peace and when we have that joy, sometimes we face things so courageously, so optimistically, so amazingly that they do change for the better. But even when they don't, we still have the peace, and we still have the joy, and we still have the courage, and we still have the comfort. That is the promise. We are never alone. And because we're never alone, we can always keep going forward. Ministers are coming forward now to anoint us with oil as a reminder that we are never alone. We have the message, we have the community, but more importantly, we have what is behind all of that, which is the very Spirit of life. As these ministers touch you and anoint you with oil, there's no magic in their hand, there's no magic in the oil. There's just the reminder that right where you are, God is. You are never alone. You can face what's next, and you can have peace and joy no matter what's next. If that's good news for you, I invite you to rise as you're able, come forward as you will. We'll crowd around this altar, we'll support each other, we will make sure that we are not alone, and we will give miracles a chance. Please come. God within us, God who holds us, God that is the very substance of our lives. As we reflect on these realities, on these truths, on these verities, we know that we are never alone. In this experience of life and in whatever is beyond, you are with us. You are enfolding us. We are in your heart. You are in ours. And so we take great comfort from that right here and right now. And not only comfort, but hope. We allow ourselves to be filled with indomitable hope. Hope that we can do the next thing. Hope that we can experience more peace and more joy. Hope that we can face whatever's in front of us. Hope that we can get through the difficulties and return to a life of comfort and joy. Of course we hope for abundance. Of course we hope for good health. Of course we hope for harmony in our relationships. We also dare to hope that even until those hopes are made manifest, we can still have peace and joy. And we give thanks for these miracles. And by faith we call it done. As we say together, divine love will never let me go.
Divine love will never let me go.
The divine presence is my constant helper.
The divine presence is my constant
Hope sustains me at all times.
Hope sustains me at all times.
And so it is. Jesus, according to the tradition, gathered with friends to share a meal in the midst of difficulty, as if to demonstrate that optimism is always available no matter what is going on, no matter what is happening, no matter how bleak things look. And so gathered with people, he demonstrates that when we gather together, when we share what we have, when we eat a meal, no matter what we are doing, we can experience the presence of God because there's not a spot where God is not. And so Jesus, after that meal, took a piece of leftover bread and blessed it by giving thanks, because gratitude is the best way to bless anyone or anything. And then he broke the bread, as if to say, when you are feeling broken, remember there is divine wholeness beyond that experience. He said, take and eat and remember. And then he took Elijah's cup and he blessed it and he offered it to everyone, leaving no one out, saying, drink all of this, all of you. This is a cup of a new and everlasting covenant, a covenant that includes all people. And whenever you drink this, remember. Holy One, we give thanks that at this table, you are reminding us of our oneness with you and with one another. And so we give thanks for this, and we allow these simple elements, these simple symbols, to remind us of the profound truth that wherever we are, you are, and all is well. Amen. Sunshine Cathedral, we practice an open communion. And what that means is you don't have to be a member of this church or any church to receive the sacrament, just as you are. With whatever your beliefs or doubts may be, you are welcome to participate in this feast of unconditional love. My friends, these are the gifts of God for all the people of God.
Hello, I want to thank you for joining us for worship today here at the Sunshine Cathedral. Again, if you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, please stop by and worship with us on Sundays at 9 and 10:30 a.m. If you'd like to find out more about the Sunshine Cathedral, about our resources, or about our books published by our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Durrell Watkins, or if you'd like to make a donation to the Sunshine Cathedral, please visit us at www.sunshinecathedral.org. Until the next time, may God continue to richly bless you on your journey.